in the trench coat. Let's bring him out. Misha,
What?
Is that a kiss? Did you give me a kiss?
Well, it was awkward because I just went to sniff your neck for some reason. I was just following a natural impulse.
Sure.
And then as I got close, you opened up like, oh, he's gonna kiss me. And then I felt like, oh, this is awkward. He wants me to kiss his neck. That's not appropriate in front of all of these people.
That's the first part of that story where you're wrong. I just was embarrassed, actually. Sweet, sensual. I was worried because I smell like Pringles.
How do you get that Pringles smell?
I was just making the duck beak with the Pringles, you know, like you do. Anywho, this isn't about me and my duck Pringles. It's about you, Misha.
I was flying here next to somebody who was eating barbecue potato chips. And it was just there was a lot of, she dragged it out for what seemed like the whole flight. And the wafting smell of those chips was like, at first it was like, oh yeah, that looks yummy. And then I was like, okay, can we finish the chips? How is this still happening?
It's still a barbecue. All right.
Funny how the little things that you get annoyed by with your seatmates on a plane.
Man.
And it's kind of arbitrary. You can sit next to somebody and have no bad feelings about them at all, and then it could be like, you gotta wipe those crumbs off your shirt?
Totally. Oh wow,
you want me to do it?
Yeah, you're gonna tilt your seat back even more. Listen, pal, it doesn't go back anymore. You get so mad about those little things. Yeah. It's so true.
Yeah.
Anywho, I'm gonna go. This is your panel.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
Backstage, as we change guard up on stage, the microphone gets handed from one actor to another, and Tomo was coming off and reached to hand his microphone to me, and one of the creation staff was like, no, let me grab the sanitizing wipes, because we're still sanitizing microphones, which is funny because also we're kissing each other. There's all of these, we're following certain rules still, and yet there are other things that we're doing that are like, well, that doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. We're wiping that down, but then licking each other. But I guess, it just shows you care still. Which no one actually does, it seems like. It's nice to be back in DC. How many of you are from the DC metropolitan area? Wow, a shocking number of you are not from the DC metropolitan. How many are not from DC? Wow, it's like January 6th all over again. You said, but nicer? Or they were nicer? These people are nicer? Well, we'll see. I've spent a lot of time in my life in DC, and it's like bringing back a lot of memories. I was just sitting in the green room reflecting on like, oh right, and then there was that happened, and then there was that happened. I came here for the first lengthy stay when I was interning at the White House, and I was so excited for that job, but I was a terrible intern. It turns out so I don't know if you all know this, but sometimes they make interns do really boring things. And so I was constantly trying to figure out a way to make my job interesting, and my job included, I was reviewing applicants I was in the Office of Presidential Personnel, and the Office of Presidential Personnel is responsible for making about 3,200 presidential appointments. So there are like a lot of jobs out there in the federal government that are presidential appointments. Some of them are like Secretary of Agriculture, you know, big deal jobs like that, which we would get floods of applications in for, and I would open the mail. And there are a lot of people who think that you get the job of Secretary of Agriculture by sending in a headshot and resume. So I found this hilarious, and I brought home a fairly large collection of applications. Some of them were like soft, like there was this woman who was like a former Miss America who sent in like 10 glossy 8x10 soft focus, half nude photos of herself. She wanted to be ambassador to Sweden, I think. And I was like, do you really think this would work on President Clinton? I just wrote that just now. I have one more, I'm going to tell one more DC related story because it's relevant. So I was 16 and I actually rode my bike from Boston down to DC. It was this long bike ride. I got down here and I was expecting to stay with my girlfriend, my high school girlfriend who later became my wife. And I arrived to find out that her mother was not happy with that arrangement. Her mother was still mad because we were going to boarding school, or I was a day student. She was my girlfriend was a boarding student up in Massachusetts, and Vicky had got permission to come have a sleepover at her friend Misha's house, which her mother assumed was a girl. Which we knew. Anyway, her mom was not happy about this. So when I came to visit, I was staying in the neighbor Marilyn's basement, not at Vicky's house. And her mother, while I was visiting, told her something that's, I think, a very sage piece of advice, which was, if the farmer can get the milk for free, he's not going to buy the cow. And she is a religious woman, and she gave Vicky a promise ring while I was visiting. The promise ring, I don't know if you're all familiar with this, but it's a very effective tool to get your teenage children to engage in celibacy. You're promising that you're not going to give it away for free until the farmer buys the cow. Which is a euphemistic way of saying, you're not going to have sex until you get married. Right. And then later, Vicky and I were in college together. Some time had passed. She'd been now wearing this promise ring for a few years. And we were moving in. I built her a bed. Like, it was a very, loving gesture. And it was a very beautiful bed, but we had to dismantle it in order to bring it into the apartment that we were moving into together. This was going to be us moving in together. We were not married at this point, and the farmer was getting the milk for free. And as we were negotiating this headboard across the threshold, the door to the apartment, the headboard wedged her ring against the door jamb and broke the ring.
Isn't that amazingly symbolic?
Anyway, I don't know why I had to tell you that story, but I did. Okay, who has a question?
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Marnie.
Hi, Marnie.
First off, I came with a young lady who, she just celebrated her 16th birthday last Saturday. Can you tell Laura happy birthday?
Happy birthday, Laura.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on making it this far.
So, we've heard about all the shenanigans that have been played on set, right? I know.
We're a very serious operation.
Right? So, you know, anytime you join a company, start a new job, there's always groups and friends and whatnot that get together. So was there a time, like an instance or a time period that went by that you finally felt like family or brothers or boys?
Was there a time when I felt like I was finally accepted as a part of the group?
Yes.
On Supernatural?
Yes.
So that the question itself implies that I didn't feel that way.
Yes.
Are you aware of that? Are you aware that you painted me as a hated outsider?
Not at all. Just the new kid.
I was the new kid, right? And I felt like the new kid for a shockingly long time. I was, and I think part of that was because like this was a show about two brothers, right? It was very unambiguously a show about these two brothers. And then there was this like weird, new, dorky, slightly on the spectrum angel that comes in and is like, hey, can I be friends with you guys? And they're like, no, you're not even human. So as an actor, I think it actually took me a while. It was at the end of the first season at our rap party that I was like, oh, you know what? I'm starting to feel like I fit in here. And also, like, there's weird, like, power dynamics and all that stuff. If you're a guest star, what that really comes with is no guarantee of job security at all. When you're a series regular, you're only guaranteed that one season that you're working in. But at least you know, like, they're not going to kill me, probably, at least until the end of the season, you know? But when you're a guest star, you never know when your last episode is going to be, and so I was, like, in that space as well. And then Jared and Jensen would relentlessly pick on me. Tried to make me laugh while we were filming, very immature, basically hazing. I think that they're like, if we were on a college campus, the dean would probably shut their fraternity down for the kind of stuff that they put me through. But over time, I just I endured it, and then Alex joined the show. And I saw them do that same hazing to him. And because I'm an empathetic person, I was like, I'm gonna join in Jared and Jensen and do what they're doing. And so that's when I really felt like I belonged. It was when I could participate in causing the suffering of someone else. Finally. Yeah, thanks.
Amy.
Hi.
Hi. I was going to ask you if you had any funny pieces first, if I'm really curious.
Wait, any funny stories about what?
DC, but you kind of already answered that. So.
Let's see. Funny stories about DC. Well, I was very poor when I was here. I was starting a software company. That was my out of college idea, so, gosh, what story should I tell? There are certainly stories I should not tell. I also, what's that? I mean, the interns were, no, that's not the right story. So I was very, we didn't have a lot of money, and so there would be, I discovered early on here in DC, because all the money was going into the software company at this point, this startup software company that was very ill-conceived because I know nothing about software. But I discovered that there was this thing called happy hour in DC. And the great thing about happy hour is if you buy a beer, you can eat all of the like free snacks you want. And so this was like the cornerstone of my diet. I would basically wake up, have a piece of toast, and wait until happy hour when I would survive on beer and like cold pizza. So it was kind of great. But I remember people were always like, there's a cultural difference between the East Coast and the West Coast. So on the West Coast, you can meet people and you can get to know them, and they're, you know, you can joke with them, you can go camping with them, and then you can, you know, spend 2 years with them as your close friend and realize, I don't know if they ever went to college or what they do for a living. On the East Coast, if you go to happy hour and someone sits down next to you at the bar, the first question they ask is, what do you do? And the second question is, where did you go to college? And so I found that kind of like irksome. Like, that's not who I am at my core, what I do, and where I went to college. So I developed this antisocial habit of when people ask me that question, I would say, what do you do? And I'd say, nothing. Kind of defiantly. And it would be this really awkward record scratch on the conversations. And then I would also, they'd say, where'd you go to college? And I'd say, none of your business. And then I decided to quit the software company. And then people would say, what do you do? And then I'd say nothing, but it no longer had that forceful, defiant quality. It was just like, I actually don't do anything. And I don't know what to do with myself. And that's what really, like, that was the turning point where I decided to become an actor. It was out of desperation in these awkward conversations in DC. Do you have another question? Because you didn't get to ask your question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as someone who dates in DC, that's definitely the conversation, except now they have their security clearance.
Oh, what is your security clearance?
I know, it's impressive.
You have one?
No.
Loser. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because you are insisting. When I was interning at the White House, every day when I left for lunch, you go in, you go through like security stuff, they pat you down, X-ray machine, and then back in 19 whatever, 19s, back in the 19s, they would put a little lanyard on a chain around your neck. It was your security badge that showed that you belonged in the White House and checked you in. And then when you went out for lunch, you would drop it in a little basket. And then when you came back in, they'd give you another one. Well, I would, you know, I put it in my pocket instead. And then I would take, when I went out to lunch, and then I'd get a new one. And then when I went home, I'd take another one. So every day, I stole 2 security badges from the White House. And I also stole a lot of letterhead that says the White House on it, which I still have, and occasionally use, because it's, believe it or not, really fucking useful. And I had, in my room, at my mother's house, I made like a mobile, like I had this plant, like hanging plant thing with no plant in it, and I hung all of these security badges as like a decorative element in my room. And then someone was like, wait, are these actual security badges from the White House? And I was like, yeah, pretty cool, huh? I've got like 100 of them. And then this person like flipped it over and started reading the back of it with small print that I had never taken a look at. And it said something like, you know, minimum 7-year prison felony charge. Having this in your possession outside of White House grounds. Which gave me pause. It would be like 700 years in prison. Anyway, but I'm not worried about that now. Because it's statute of limitations and all. You still didn't get to ask your question, huh? It sucks. You know, if you had had a security clearance, I would have let you know. Well, you know what though? I mean, a security clearance doesn't even mean anything these days because you can apparently, you know, put top secret documents in, and take it back to your house. With nuclear codes, if you want. Nobody does anything. I mean, it's amazing to think, like, the FBI or the National Archives or whoever has been after these documents has been after the presumably they were taken 2 years ago, almost, right? So during that time, it's like, hey, I think you accidentally took a few van loads of top secret documents back to your hotel, your golf course. Could you shoot those back to us? No? Okay, we'll just wait. What's the worst that could happen with top secret documents floating around for 1.5 years with no one watching them? Anyway, it seems like there should have been a little bit more urgency on that one, in my point of view. Anyway, you were saying. Do you work for the government? Do you even work for the government? Or are you just an imposter? Wait.
No, but my brother and his girlfriend work for the FBI. So.
Your brother and his girlfriend work for the FBI? Okay, now you're talking. Do they do any raids?
I was talking to her last night at dinner. She said they found out on texting people, like, be like, oh my god, you know what the raids are? Like, it's not my department. Like,
Should they be texting about that sort of thing? That's maybe a violation of...
I think iMessages are encrypted, so that's okay, but probably not WhatsApp.
Well, you probably shouldn't be revealing those secrets. When I'm sorry to beat a dead horse here with my stories, but when I was applying for the job of White House intern, I amazingly, through some clerical error, got the internship, but then I had to fill out the FBI security clearance documents. It was 22 pages of detailed FBI security clearance forms that I had to fill out, and it got to the question of, this probably isn't going to make sense to most of the audience because they're too young, but it got to a question like, have you ever tried any illegal drugs, taken any illegal drugs? And I took a puff of a joint. I used the exact right language, but I didn't inhale. It was I wrote whatever Bill Clinton had said publicly about his smoking pot. And I was like, ha ha ha, you are very clever, young man. And I remember, like, filling out, so I filled out the paperwork, and then I put it into one of those blue mailboxes. And as I remember so clearly, as the door was shutting and the envelope was sliding in, I was like, no, no, no. Like, I realized, like, it's not FBI security clearance form. You don't make jokes about doing drugs. And it went in, and I didn't get it back. And I was like, shit, why did I do that? And then, time went by. Anyway, long story short, they let me go. They allowed me to steal 100 badges. And then, like, about a year later, there were all these news articles about how they were backlogged with the FBI security clearance things. And there was, like, 2 years backlog, and all these people had been allowed to, like, come into the federal government and had not had their FBI security stuff vetted at all, which is awesome. So at some point, it came across someone's desk, and they were like, well, this guy can't. Oh shit, that was 2 years ago. He's already gone. We should probably go raid his house. Anyway, you were asking a question.
Taking up so much time, I feel like I should ask you.
Yeah, you should. It's a little bit rude. But anyway, you're connected with some very important people at the FBI, and you're sharing some of their secrets, so it's worth it.
What's your favorite color?
You win this round. Touche. Not even going to try to do a funny quip. That was really, you won that one. Hi.
Answer the question. What is it? What's the answer?
Well, it's complicated. I'm sentimentally attached to the color orange, but I think I prefer the color blue.
actors feel very connected to their characters and feel very similar while filming. But now that you haven't been filming for a while, are there any qualities you've noticed about yourself and you're like, oh wow, I'm a lot more like Castiel than I thought?
Wait, now that what?
Now that you're no longer filming?
Now that I have a little bit more perspective on the matter.
Are there any other, qualities you're like, oh wow, I'm more like him than I thought?
I don't know that I've gained. Well, I don't know. Probably yes. I mean, I haven't spent a lot of time reflecting on it. But now that you're making me in front of all these people, I think that Cass. It's funny. In certain situations, like not when I'm on stage, and not when I'm talking to groups, but when I'm maybe by myself or having an intimate, personal conversation, I think I have like a certain, I don't know, like kind of melancholy quality to my personality or something that can come across that I think was very prevalent in Cass's personality. There was a certain abiding sadness. That almost has, the word almost has too much weight to it, that there was a certain like reflective melancholy to Cass that I think I bring to a lot of walks of my own life. I don't know. That was more reflective than I intended to be, but mistakes happen. Thanks. Hi.
Hey, I'm Kelly. And
Hi, Kelly.
I love you. You're great. My question is, are you becoming more comfortable actually seeing people like have your face on their t-shirts and out in public, like come up to you being like, oh my gosh, you're saying quotes or whatnot? Or
That implies that I was ever not comfortable with that. I am extremely comfortable with seeing myself on t-shirts. It's weird not to see myself on more billboards. Tattoos, super comfortable for me. Big face tat. It's, nothing makes me feel more comfortable than when I see a tattoo of my face on someone's face. I'm gonna tell a story that is just it's me bragging, but it's masquerading as a story about my family. Just to set your expectations, right? So I don't remember why, but I was sitting. So this is something that makes me uncomfortable. A lot of times, my kids don't treat me like I'm famous. And we were sitting having dinner. I had just made them dinner. Then like usual, like I make nice, like thoughtful meals at least twice a day when I'm with the kids. And inevitably, I'll say like, kids, 5 minutes to dinner. Give them a warning. And then the hot meal will be ready and plated and ready to go. And those little fuckers won't come. So finally they get to the table. I've been sitting there for several minutes. Their food is now cold. And I made some little quip about, it'd be nice if you treated me like I'm a famous father than I am, or something like that, and actually listen to me. But I made a joke about being famous and feeling like they don't, give me the due respect. And out of the blue, West says, who do you think's more famous, you or Carl Sagan? I was like, obviously me. And then he whips out his phone and he Googles, who's more famous, Misha or Carl Sagan? And for some reason, he very quickly came to the Erdos Bacon number, which no one knows what it is here, but it's, the bacon number?
Yes.
like how many degrees of separation you are from Kevin Bacon? I'm 2. My Bacon number is 2 because I've worked with people who have worked with Kevin Bacon. And then there's this mathematician named Erdos, who he was the most prolific publisher of math papers. And so, and when you publish a paper, you usually have like 7 or 8 people publishing the paper together. So there's an Erdos number for mathematicians. I happen to have an Erdos number as well. And there's only like 25 or 30 people in the world who have an Erdos Bacon number, who have both been in a movie with somebody who's been in a movie with Kevin Bacon, and who have their name as an author on a math paper with someone who, you know. So anyway, long story short, of the 25 or 30 people in the world who have an Erdos Bacon number, me and Carl Sagan are 2. And it's the same. And West was like,
Hi, Misha.
Hi.
Yeah. I know I look like a small child. I'm not. With that being said, we all know screw off. Screw you, Misha.
this is off to a great start.
Being that you do get picked on, probably a little bit less than I do. What is the best prank that has been pulled on you by any cast member?
Best or worst?
Do you classify the worst one as the best?
Worst for me?
Change in your car.
Doing what to my car? The change in my car? Change in my car was annoying, and that was bad because it had a long tail. It sort of, I was reminded, long story short, I lost a bet to Jared. It was the biggest bet I've ever lost and ever will lose, I think. And it was like, what?
Only one bet?
This is one bet. And I think I owed him $1,600 Canadian. And it was sickening to me. And whatever. It was a terrible situation. But I spent several days going to banks around Vancouver, getting pennies and nickels and dimes, and I paid him back in this mountain of change in his trailer when he was on set. I dumped this whole like 5-gallon buckets of change into his trailer. And then he took that change. You know what he did, which was really irked me. He had a guy, Johnny, who worked in the transport department, clean his trailer, take all the change, and do his dirty work for him. Which is not cool. You know, that's Jared's money. Jared should be happy to handle it himself. And then he dumped the change in my car and left a note saying donation for random acts. And that is, it's much more difficult to clean the change out of all the cracks and It wasn't like just on the seat. It was like all over the gear shift and under the seats, everywhere. And then I was like, oh my God. And I had to drive home, you know, and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, Johnny, can you help me clean this up? And Jared's like, and Johnny's like, no, Jared specifically told me I couldn't.
Are you still finding change today?
So that car I no longer have. I actually gave it to a friend. And I was in the car with her recently. This is literally 10 years, 12 years later, a long time ago. And she hit the brakes at a stoplight, and I heard, shh. There's still change sloshing around under the seats in that car. Anyway, so that one had a long tail. It was a constant reminder of Jared's nefarious influence.
Thank you for answering my question, Misha.
Thank you for asking.
Hi, my name's Holly.
Hi, Holly.
Love you. So handsome.
Thanks. What else? Tell me more. No, that's fine. No.
I just have a question about the Hollywood parody,
Okay.
specifically the second version. If you have any good or funny memories from making it that you haven't told.
I have very little memory of doing that at all. You're talking about the Ghostbusters one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think I requested that role. I don't know, what's her name? Penny? Peggy?
Holly.
Huh?
Holly.
That's the character's name? No, not yours. Janine. Thank you for being so loud. You can have 1,000 people telling you the same word and not be able to understand it. It's a remarkable phenomenon. Yeah, so it was, I have this tendency when I'm playing a role to take it seriously, no matter how ridiculous it is. I don't know what it is about me, and it's not because I'm not aware that it's a parody or something like that. But I was like, well, I really have to, I remember getting worried, like, I really have to watch that over and over again and try to, mimic that character as well as I possibly can. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, that doesn't look anything like her. I don't have any stories though for you, I'm sorry. I remember we were in Las Vegas in a very sweltering hot studio somewhere where I'm quite certain bad things had happened to good people. And they were constantly having to mop the sweat off my face during that. Yeah, I think I had to wring out my cardigan when we were done. There you go.
I'm Noelle, that's my sister.
That was your...
Yeah, we're twins.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Planned this? It's very impressive.
Apparently, it's our first convention too, so I
Oh,
don't know how
really?
we lucked out.
Well, welcome. I hope it's treating you well.
Yeah, it is. It's very stressful.
I know. What's stressful about it?
Just running up and down and everything.
Where are you running up and down?
Well, like going from like photo ops to autographs to.
Okay. You made it sound like you were doing wind sprints in the
No.
hallway. Me and my sister were racing.
No, but I'm loving it. But my question is, do you have a quote from like your childhood that you've taken with you until now, or like a new one that you now follow?
A quote from my childhood.
Yeah, like something just like somebody either like you read or somebody told you that kind of just stuck with you.
Well, there are a couple of quotes that I picked up along the way that I kind of remind myself of from time to time. One is a complicated one because it's not always true, but it's something that I read in a Murakami book, what I talk about when I talk about running, and it's a quote that actually it's not Murakami, I don't even know how to pronounce his name. He didn't actually write this, but it's suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that is perhaps in its most pure sense true. Like people who are, attain a certain level of enlightenment in life can actually endure incredible pain and not suffer through it, just observe it as pain, emotional pain or physical pain. And it's sort of aspirational for me. So while I find myself suffering many times and suffering in a way that doesn't feel like a choice point, that quote is often a reminder to pull myself out of the stories that are making my suffering worse. And then from early childhood, my mom had a friend who was this guy who was very poor and I think teetering on homelessness. I think he ended up being a heroin addict and died of an overdose when I was like 11. But when I was 5, he was one of those guys that picks up garbage on the side of the highway, and he had a little spear that he poked the garbage with, and he drew this little watercolor pencil drawing of himself poking trash in a full raincoat. And it just said, I didn't mind working in the rain today because it's Misha's birthday. And I was just this 5-year-old kid, but that card, I kept it with me until our house burned down when I was a junior in high school. But for some reason, it was so meaningful to me, and I think it was because it was just this small gesture from somebody who I didn't even know that well. It wasn't like he was a super, like an uncle figure or anything, but it was just this small gesture of kindness that had a big impact on me, and it stuck with me. And I think I may have kept that as a reminder, to try to be kind to people and pay attention to people, because you never know when it's going to be something that actually lands for them. So while the quote itself is not one that is ever going to be on any tombstone, it held special meaning for me nonetheless.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi, Sydney.
So I was wondering, you cook with your kids that are older now. So if they had any of the dishes that they made when they were younger that they actually secretly really like, or if you ever made one of those dishes with them and how they reacted to it.
You mean the cooking fast and fresh dishes? Like Santa Monica winter salad or something like that?
Or just Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that Thanksgiving pasta with jam sauce. Yeah. For those of you who don't know, I made these little series of videos with my son and a little bit daughter when she was very young when we were doing these. But it was basically just letting West take the reins in the kitchen, and we would go to the grocery store. He would pick the items that we were buying, and then he would lead in the cooking process. And one day we made pasta with jam sauce, which it was about to be Thanksgiving, and I said, Wes, why don't we do something Thanksgiving related? And he said, okay. We got in the car, and I said, what do you want to make? And he said, I want to make pasta with jam sauce. Okay, all right, we'll do that. So we did it, and it was truly vile. And it was a catastrophic mess. If you can find it on YouTube, but he ended up getting the beaters out and spraying this it was tomato sauce mixed with chocolate sauce, mixed with jam, mixed with a whole apple, and it was just I was wiping it out of my eyes, and I was and out of every crevice in the kitchen for months after that. But we put that, so I have this scavenger hunt Gish, and we put in Gish one year the recipe, all the ingredients that went into pasta with jam sauce, and then as an item for the scavenger hunt, we had people prepare pasta with jam sauce for professional food critics. And the item was to get a professional food critic to write a review of pasta with jam sauce. And there's all these really high profile professional food critics who wrote critiques of pasta with jam sauce. And so there was, I think it was a Seattle Times food critic wrote, hate is not strong enough a word. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because the other day I was when the kids used to make concoctions all the time. That's what they called it. I'm like, Dad, I'm making a concoction. And their mom was much more lenient about this than I was, because I found it very bothersome just how wasteful it was. Because it was always all of the spices, once again, have been mixed with milk and orange juice for something that no one will eat. It costs $100 in spices. So I opened the cupboard and I saw all my spices and I was like, oh, they're all there. They're not making concoctions anymore. But it is sweet to be in a different phase where they're actually like trying to make things that are tasty. And you know, we made macaroons the other day, which was like, you know, a delicate process of making a meringue and cooking it at the right temperature and the right consistency. And it was just, it's nice to be in a different phase, partly from a cleanup standpoint. Yeah. Thanks. Hi.
I know you worked for the White House. I was wondering if you have any advice for someone who wants to work for the government?
Well, when you're filling out your FBI clearance, the truth is you can really get away with stealing a lot of stuff if you work for the government. So consider that. Look, if you think about it, the government works for you, right? So technically, when you're, for example, taking office supplies, those are your office supplies. So I would just say, when you do get officially, you know, signed on,